Welcome to the Westcott Crochet channel and welcome to this oversized boyfriend sweater or sweater dress depending on how long you choose to make it. I wanted to make a big cozy sweater, but often that takes a whole heap of yarn and a whole heap of time, so I opted for this quick yarn saving V-stitch pattern. If there is a written pattern for this one, the link will be in the description box. For this project I used about 1,500 meters of double knit yarn, 300 of which was in the contrast colour. It recommended a 4mm hook. I used a 5mm for the main body and a 4mm for the neck, cuff and bottom trim. I also used a tape measure, stitch markers and a yarn needle to weave in the ends. If you enjoyed the video, please give a thumbs up and leave a comment to highlight the video. If you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell to support future uploads. You can now also follow me on Instagram, and if your account is set to public, do tag me in on any pictures of your Westcott crochet projects. If you hop over to Instagram just now and check out the post prior to the one on this sweater, you'll see that I do in fact have a head. Not sure how long it will stay up there for, but it's there for now. I'm starting things today with a chain that runs along the top of my shoulder and sort of falls off the edge of my arm. I'll put a little diagram on screen to show what I mean. I'm going to work a multiple of 3 chains, so I'm going to work 30. Starting with a slip knot and 30 chains. Your start chain should reach from point A to B. A marks the centre point on top of the shoulder. B extends out past the shoulder and determines the width of your sweater. There I have 30 chains. Here you can either chain 2 more, and the first 3 chains are your first double crochet, and you'd start your next stitch into stitch number 4. So you'd work 2 more chains, 3 chains are your first double crochet, your next stitch is in stitch number 4 away from your hook. For me, I'm going to work a standing double into stitch number 1. Pull up my yarn, my loop, to the height of a double crochet, plant finger on loop, just give it a little twist to pull the 2 strands together, and then I wrap the yarn loop around my hook to form a loop, in through the stitch, pull back a loop, so I've got 3, yarn over, pull through 2 of those loops, I can let go now, yarn over, pull through the remaining 2 loops, and then I put a stitch double crochet into the next chain along. As I say, for your chain start, that would be chain number 4, and a chain 1, and I'm going to put another double crochet into that very same stitch, and that represents a double crochet at the start and then a V-stitch. And the V-stitch is basically double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into the same stitch. I'm going to skip 2 chains and I'm going to work another V-stitch into the 3rd stitch. So again, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet into the same stitch. Skip 2, V-stitch, skip 2, V-stitch, all the way to the end. At the end of row 1, you should have your V-stitch and then 1 stitch left or 1 chain left to work a double crochet. So you start and end with a double crochet on that first row and then just V's all the way along. Make sure you don't work chains between your V's, just in the actual V. So for row 2, either chain 3 and turn, and that chain 3 is your first double crochet, or standing double. So again, plant your finger on the loop, wrap the loop around your hook, in through the stitch, pull back a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through the last 2. And then, so that's gone on top of the first stitch, so the double crochet that you just worked on the end of the last round. Next we jump into the chain 1 space in the V and work a V. So double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. Skipping this section here where you've just got your 2 stitches together and right into the next V, so the chain 1 space, work another V. So it's going directly on top of the last V from the last round. again, skip that, into the next V, work a V, and do that all the way along. At the end of row 2, so I've worked V's on top of V's, and I've worked double crochet on top of my double crochet at either end. I'm not going to stop there at this end because I want this to start sloping down now. So where I put that last double crochet, I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to turn that into a V and add a second double crochet into that last stitch. And that just starts the sloping process. So from here, the end with the tail will stay flat. I'll just work double crochets on top of double crochets at the end of each round. And at the other side, away from the tail end, I'm going to be working a slope. Now the slope is only worked in the direction away from the tail end, so going in this direction at this end, I'm working the slope. As I turn to come back, I'm going to just work a flat side, a flat edge. So a double into the last stitch, or the first stitch, as I turn around. And then I'm onto a chain 1 space, so I'm going to work a V. Again, next chain 1 space, work a V, and so on all the way across. And at the end, because we're finishing flat on that side, I'll work just a double crochet into that last stitch. The end of row 3, I've ended again, as I said, with a flat side and a double crochet on top of the last double crochet. I'm going to start again and work a double at this end to keep it flat, and then V all the way across. I'll meet you back at this end. So back at the sloping end, I have worked my last V on top of the last V stitch, and I have my post here from the previous round, the double crochet post. I'm going to work a V into that top of that post, as I say, going away from the tail end in towards the sloping end. That's where I work a V at the end. Just into that last stitch, double crochet, chain 1, double crochet. And that's the repetition. I'm going to turn, work a double crochet into the first stitch, and then a V into the chain 1 space, and so on. V's all the way across, at the end keeping this end straight, just put a double crochet, turn, do a double crochet on this end, again keeping it straight, V's all the way across, and at the last stitch I work a V again. I just keep going and doing that with those 2 rows until I get the length that I want. Continue working your slope until it reaches the centre of your chest. And the length that I needed was 18 rows. I've ended over on the sloping edge with a V as the last stitch. You can see. So all the way along this sloping side, I've had the end is for the first row is a post, the second row is a V, third row is a post, fourth row is a V, and so on. Post V, post V, post V. So if you get lost, that's the pattern that you're following. So as I say, 18 rows for me. This point here reaches the centre of the top of my shoulder, and down here is the middle of my chest, making the point of the V neck. Now I need to make a mirror image of this for the other side. For the mirror side, I start in exactly the same way. I work a chain of 30, and row 1 is exactly the same. It starts with a double crochet or a chain of 3, so an extra 2 chains if you're chaining start. Then I worked a V, skip 2, V, skip 2, V, skip 2, V, all the way along to the end, and a double crochet at the end. So exactly the same as row 1, right back at the beginning. Row 2 is where the difference starts, because I want the slope to start now at the tail end, and the other side will stay flat. So straight away as I turn, I'm going to put a V on top of stitch number 1. So you're either going to have to chain 4 and then work your second double crochet into the first stitch, which would equate to a double crochet, a chain 1 and then a double crochet, or you can work your standing double. And chain 1 and a second standing double, sorry, a second double should I say, a regular. So that's the first V right on top of that stitch. Then I'm on to a chain 1 space. So again, another V. And as before, I'll work my V's all the way to the end. And then I'll just put a double crochet on the other end to keep it flat. At the end of row 2, as I say, flat side over here now, sloping side at the tail end. I'm going to just work up and across to the tail end and show what happens there, because this is all standard. Double crochet and V's all the way along. So here I am at the sloping end, and this is where I worked the V as I started that last round. So I'm going to work a V on top of that V. In the chain 1 space as standard. And then I'm going to add a post on top of the final stitch. So it's essentially on the second post of the V. So again, I'm starting with a post for round 1, with a V for round 2, with a post for round 3, and then I'm going to start with a V. So every time I leave this end, this sloping end, I'm leaving with a V. And as I arrive to close it off, I'm finishing with a post. Just a single double crochet at the end. And then the V starts off the next row on top of that double crochet, and then I go straight into another V into the chain 1 space. So it's exactly the same as you've been doing for the first piece, but in reverse. So again, I'm going to keep going with this piece until it matches the other one. So for me, 18 rows. So this is my second panel, 18 rows later, as I said before, and I've ended with a V in this pointy end. For some reason I felt the need to cut my yarn. I shouldn't have done that. I'm not sure why. So I'm just going to reattach and zoom in. So I'm just at the bottom where I've cut my yarn. If, like me, you've cut yours, reattach with a slip knot. And just chain either 3 if you're a chain 3 start, or for me I'm just going to chain 1 to secure and work a standing double to start this round as normal. And from here it is as normal all the way along till you get to this pointy end. I'm here at the end of the row, the pointy end, and I've got my last V, and I'm going to put a V in there. And then I'm going to work a post at the end, so a double crochet. When I say post, I mean a double crochet on its own as opposed to a V. Oops, stuck. Bit of a loop issue. There we go. Now I need to grab my other panel. I have panel number 2 with the pointy ends together. I'm going to join this one to this one. So I just worked the double crochet at the end of this panel. I'm going to start with a double crochet on this one. So straight into stitch number 1 at the pointy end and a double crochet. Then I'm on to the chain 1 space of the V. So I'm going to work a V stitch. And I'm going to work my V stitches as standard all the way along. And at the end, I keep it flat and finish on a double crochet. So I'm going to work to the end. I'm going to turn around and come back, and I'll meet you back here. So back at the center point here, I'm going to work a V on top of my last V on this side. I'm going to work another V into the join here. Just around that space. And then another V into the first chain one space on the other side, on top of that first V. And then I'll just crack on as normal, all the way across to the end. Okay, with my two pieces joined now in the middle, I just need to keep working rows, flat ends on both sides, until I get the length that I want. I've worked 49 rows, including a couple of colour changes here. I can't get it all on camera because it's too huge. I'm just going to show you how I change colour real quick, just at the bottom here on this last stitch. Starts as normal, yarn over in through the stitch, pull back a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 loops, and then for the last pull through, I grab the second colour and just pull through with that. And then just tighten that off. I can now tie this tail end, the new tail end, to the old colour and carry on. If you can see here, I've just trailed my old colour down the new rows and picked it back up again at the bottom. I can take off the slack, but don't pull it too tight so it doesn't distort the edge of the work. You can, if you want, just tie off, start again, tie off and start again each time. But I went this way because it's just a couple of rows and it's quicker. Okay, so I just need to take this back out because I'm not changing colour here. For this last row, I'll just finish off this stitch in the regular colour. So I'm just going to turn around, and the first stitch is normal. Just in that first stitch, double crochet, or you're chaining 3 obviously. And then the next stitch also as normal into the V. But then after that, I'm going to put a stitch in this middle section as well, but just one. I'm not going to work the V's anymore. As you can see, I just put 1 stitch in the V, 1 stitch in the gap in between where I'd normally work my V's. So 1 stitch in the V, 1 in the gap between, all the way along. So I've worked that entire row, and at the end I've worked my double crochet in the final V and double crochet into the last stitch. I can then chain 1 to secure and cut. So all done with the front panel for now. And the back panel is worked up in just a block. We don't do the V at the top there, so there's no increases for the V cut out. So just count how many V's you've got down here at the bottom across the row. Multiply that count by 3. That's your start chain. For me, I had 39. So 39 times 3 is 117. That was my start chain, and I worked the entire back panel for 49 rows, same as this one, and finished off with the double crochet row at the end. I have my 2 panels now, and I've lined them up with the right side facing inside, so they touch each other. Just pick whichever side is your favourite side, and that's your right side. They both look the same, so whatever your reasoning. I'm going to join across the top here for the shoulders. I'm just coming a little bit closer, and I'm in through the corner stitch on both sides, both panels. I'm going to make a slip knot, add that on, pull it through, and chain 1. Okay, into that same stitch, I'm going to work a single crochet, or same 2 stitches I should say. A stitch on either side. Onto the next stitch, in through one side, in through the other, and single crochet. And I'm going to do that all the way across until I get to the end of the front panel. For the last stitch here, on the front panel I have the double crochet after the V, directly after the V, so in through that side. But on the back panel I'm on to a chain 2 space. I don't want to join the front to the chain 2 space, so I'm going to go back into that last stitch, the V on the back, and just work the second stitch into there along with the last one that I've just done, and then that leaves the V as the start of the back rather than joining halfway in. I'm going to work the same seam on the other side and then we can work on the sides. Now for seaming up the sides, I've got 2 colours and I'm going to work a few stitches into the cream with the cream yarn, and then the coffee colour will be seamed up in the coffee. So I'm seaming it up in this way. Obviously you can do it in any way you prefer. If you're a sewer, you prefer to sew the seams shut, then by all means do that, it doesn't matter. This is just the way that I'm doing it. I'm going to attach a slip knot to the bottom of those bottom stitches, pull that through, chain 1, pull it tight. Now I've got double crochet stitches and I'm going to work 2 stitches in each. So starting where I've just joined, I'm going to go in and I'm going to move that brown coffee yarn out of the way and I'm going to single crochet. Then I'm going to aim for the middle of that double crochet, in on one side, just try and grab a couple of loops so I get a good firm hold, in on the other side, there we go, again ditching the brown loop, don't work that in, and single crochet. This brown is the trailing yarn from when I changed colours. Again, you might not have that, so you're good. Right, where the 2 stitches join is the next spot. So in on one side, in on the other, same spot, mind the brown, and single crochet. So I'm just going to do that until I get to here, and then I'll come back. So I've worked my seam on the cream section, 1 in the middle of each stitch, 1 at the join of each stitch, all the way along, and the bottom one is the very last, right at the bottom of that cream section. I just need to get across this coffee area now, and I'm going to seam up the other cream section. I've got a trailing yarn here, I'm going to work around. I've got 2 rows in the coffee, so I need to work 4 stitches. If you haven't got a trailing yarn, then just work 4 chains. I'm going to work 4 single crochets around this trailing yarn. And then I'm back to the bottom here. So in through the bottom stitch on one side, in through the bottom on the other side, ditching the coffee coloured yarn, and single crochet. And then in the middle, and then at the join, middle, and then the end, and I'm done. Here at the end of the cream section, I'm just going to chain 1 to secure, and I can cut my yarn now, and on to the coffee seam. So before I start working the coffee seam, I need to know where that seam needs to stop, and that's for the arm opening, for the sleeve. And for me, I've determined my sleeve width by working a chain, a multiple of 3, that goes around my wrist. And for me, that's 30 chains. So I'm going to work 30 V's around my sleeve. So if I'm going to work 30 V's, I'm going to need 90 stitches. So that's 45 at one side, 45 down the other. I'm going to put a stitch in at the bottom, at the top of the side seam, and a stitch at the top where the shoulder seam is. So that takes me 2 off, so that's 43 now. So I need to have 43 up, 43 down. So 2 stitches into each double crochet, count my way down for 43 and mark the 43rd point, which is actually in the middle of a double crochet stitch. So I'm going to be joining up to this point. So off we go in the same way as I joined the cream section. I'm going to work the coffee seam, and my yarn is still attached from when I finished one of my panels. If not, then I just attach with a slip knot in at the corner stitches. So into each corner stitch, I've already chained one after I finished my panel. So in through corner stitch on both sides and single crochet into the middle of the double crochet, on both sides and single crochet. Here's the join of the two stitches, and there's the next one. So again, all the way up, and I'll meet you back at the cream section. That's the first part of my coffee seam. I'm now at the cream section. I've got a trailing yarn, so I'm going to work 6 stitches because I have 3 rows around this trailing yarn. If you don't have a trailing yarn, just work 6 slip stitches, chains, sorry. 3, 4, 5 and 6. And now I'm at the coffee section again. I'm going to work my stitches into this coffee section whilst avoiding this cream trail here. So it's a little fiddly. I've just got to move that out of the way and find my way through. So one right at the bottom of each stitch. There's number 1. Number 2 goes in the join. You probably can't see, but it's in the stitch between, sorry, the point between the 2 double crochets. Again, just find your way through. Just going to try and grab another loop to make sure it's good and sturdy. And same on the other side. And single crochet. So just moving this white section down to the bottom. 2 more stitches to work, and then I'm back to single crochet across the chain, the trailing yarn, sorry, and pick up on the other side and work up to the marker. So there's my entire seam. Once I've weaved in these ends, it's going to look quite neat. Obviously it's on the inside anyway, but still it's nice if it looks neat on the inside too. I'm going to just turn myself right side out and I'll be back. Right side out, and as you can see, here's the seam from the right side, and the colours are all nicely matched. So I'm going to go now around the arm opening with a round of single crochet. I'm just going to zoom in first. Okay, I'm here at the top of my seam. My yarn is still attached. If yours is not, then attach with a slip knot at the seam. I need to work 45 stitches now up one side, starting with number 1, which is right at the seam. I'm just going to force my way in here somewhere and work a single crochet. So that's number 1. Number 2 is on its own here in the first double crochet. So again, just find a way through. Number 2. And then I'm going to do 2 in each stitch, each double crochet stitch on each side of each. So find the center. I'm going to put number 1, and in the exact same spot, I'm going to put number 2. And I'll do that all the way up to the top where I should be at stitch number 45 for me. Worked all the way up one side of my arm opening, and I've got 45 stitches as I intended. I'm here at the shoulder seam. I'm going to put the first of my 45 for the other side into that seam, and then 2 in each all the way down to the bottom where I'll put 1 in the last stitch because I'm aiming for an even number. So work my way down the other side where I'll be on stitch number 45. So I've gone all the way around my sleeve now. I've got 45 up one side, 45 down the other, 90 in total, which is what I need for the next round. I'm just going to slip stitch into the first stitch to seal that off. And from here, I'm going to start working V stitches again. So I'm going to turn around to start with. And I'm going to work half the first V into that number 1 stitch. So right where I left off there, where I've slip stitched into, I'm going to work my first standing double. If you're chaining 3, you're going to chain 3. And then I'm going to skip 2 stitches, and into the next one I'm going to work a V. Oops, I don't know why I've chained 2 there. skip 2, work a V, all the way around. I've worked my V's the whole way around. Excuse me, I just hit the camera. And back at the beginning, where I have the last V and 2 stitches. And into the first stitch, I'm going to work my second double crochet to form the rest of that V. I chain 1 and slip stitch into the top of stitch number 1 to close the round. For round 2, I'm just going to spin around, bear with me. It's got quite huge, so I can't work with it. Okay, I'm going to slip stitch back onto myself around the chain 1. And then I'm going to start again. So either you're chaining 3 or you're working a standing double. And that's how every round will start. Slip stitch back on yourself, work your first stitch into the next V with my next V. Sorry, I keep hitting the camera. And so on, all the way around. So when I close again, I will work my second double crochet into that first spot, chain 1, slip stitch into the top of the first stitch. If you're changing colours, this is where that happens, at the slip stitch stage. So I've just slip stitched into stitch number 1, turned around, and I'm slip stitching now to start the next round. So my hook goes in through the chain 1 space. I grab a loop in the new colour and pull that through to complete the slip stitch, and I tie off my end as normal and start again from here. So in the new colour. So again, either chaining 3 or standing double. Just pull that all tight and tie that off. With that said, I'm not actually changing colour at this early stage. I'm going to work round and round and round on my sleeve, changing direction each time until I get the length that I want. I've worked the full length of my sleeve. On this next round, I'm going to start reducing in for the cuff. So I'm going to add just 1 double crochet into each V, so into each chain 1 space. I've slip stitched back on myself to start the round as standard. And here you'd either do your chain 3 or your standing double to start. Stitch number 1. So that's the first V, into the next V with the next double crochet. Straight into the next one for the next double crochet. And just work that the whole way around. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull in the cuff to the size that you measured when you worked the chain and wrapped it around your wrist, to check how many stitches before you started the sleeve. So that's how that looks. It pulls that in nice and tight. That's pulled the sleeve end in nicely there. I'm now going to drop down to a 4mm hook and work the cuff. For me, I'm back on with my cream yarn, and I'm going to work around the double crochet posts that I worked for the last round, so these posts, and I'm going to alternate between back post and front post. So for the first one, either you're going to chain 3, and that's going to have to count as your first stitch over your last chain 3. I'm going to work the standing double, and I'm going to go behind the post. So in, behind, pushing the post forward, and then just work the double crochet as normal. In this case, mine's standing double crochet to start. So that was behind the post. The next one I'm going to go in front of the post. So up, across the front of the post, back out the other side, pushing the post backwards, and finish the double crochet. Behind, pushing it forward, in front, pushing it back, behind, pushing forward, and in front, pushing it back. I'm going to work that the whole way around. At the end of that round, the sleeve is pulled in just a little bit more. I'm going to go a few more rounds, and where the post is pushed forward, I'm going to keep it forward. Where it's pushed back, I'm going to keep it back. So I've turned direction, and for me now, the post that was forward in the other direction is now pushed back. So first stitch, either you're chaining 3, or for me, I'm pushing that post back and going in front of it. Oops. The second one is forward, so I keep it forward and go behind. And just following on from what I did on the row prior. I'm going to do this for several rounds, as I say, until I get the cuff length that I want, and it's going to be exactly the same each round, just keeping the posts, keep working them in the direction which I started. So front where it's front, back where it's back. I worked 3 rounds of back post, front post on the cuff. I've worked the same sleeve on the other side with the same cuff. And I've worked the same back post, front post all around the bottom edge, again for 3 rounds starting from the back. Next, I need to sort out the neckline. To work the neckline, I'm going to start with a round of single crochet all the way around this edge. The plan is, from the back, I'm going to work a single crochet at the point of each V, and then 2 single crochets in the chain 2 spaces. I'm going to add another single crochet in each of the shoulder seams. And then working down the slope where I have double crochets, I'm going to put 2 in each. Then at the point in the center, another one there, 2 in each double crochet back up the side, and then I'm onto the back again, so it's 1 at the point and 2 in each chain space. So here I am starting into the center of the back. Just popped on a slip knot. I've gone in through the actual space between the 2 posts of the V. Pull that through and chain 1. So I'm going to work my first single crochet into that same space. So that's the point of the V, right in the middle. I'm onto a chain 2 space. So I'm going to work 2 single crochets. I'm working, I should have said, sorry, with the right side facing me, so that the stitches are on the right side. Onto a V, right in the middle there. Another single crochet, chain space, gets 2. Again at a V, just pull those apart and into there. I'll work up to the shoulder seam and I'll be back. I'm here at the shoulder seam, just worked across the back, no, half of the back. I'm going to just pop a stitch straight into there, right at the seam. So I should pull that out. Try again. And then I'm onto the double crochets that go down the slope of the front. And I'm going to just put 2 right around the post. Onto the next one. 2 right around the post. And so on all the way down to the bottom at the point. Here at the bottom at the V, I'm going to work 3 stitches together to form 1 stitch. So in through around that post at the bottom, pull up a loop. In between the V that marks the center point, pull back a loop. Around the post, oops, the first post that takes me up to the side, where are we? There. And back a loop. So I've got 4 loops on the hook, yarn over, and pull through all 4. And that's now 1 stitch. And then I'm just going to carry on at the other side, working 2 around each post. And just mirror what I did on the first side. So 2 around each post, 1 in the shoulder, and then across the back. I've just added a marker into the stitch that I worked into the V. So the 3 stitches together, I've marked that stitch. Back round at the start, here you can add an extra stitch into the start if you need to make sure that you end the round on an even number of stitches. If you already have an even number, then there's no need. if you just slip stitch into stitch number 1 to close the round. I'm going to work the same back post, front post edging around the neckline. I'm going to work it in the same direction I've just been working in because I want to be able to clearly see these stitch fronts, because I'm going to be working around the single crochet posts, which are a lot more difficult to pick out than the doubles, obviously, because they're shorter. So it's around these two little legs that you see at the base of each stitch that I'll be working. That's my post. So I'm going to pick up around those each time. So you're either going to chain 3 for your start, or you're going to work the standing double like I do. So around the two little legs, pushing them forward to start, and there's stitch number 1. Around the next two little legs, pushing them back, the stitch number 2, and so on, all the way around. I'm going to work my way around to the V at the front, to within 1 stitch of the stitch that I've marked. I'll come back. Just worked down the front side, and I'm at the stitch before the marked stitch. So I have this post to work around, the marked one, and the one on the other side. I'm going to work them all together. I'm going to keep doing the back post, front post alternating whilst doing that. So yarn over for stitch number 1. I've just worked a back post, so I'm on for a front, around the post, pull back a loop, yarn over, pull through 2 of those loops and hold there. Yarn over for the second one. That was a front post. I need to do a back. So in and around, whoops, that middle stitch, pull back, a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, hold it there, yarn over for number 3. I now need to do a front post, and pull through the first 2. Whoops. I now have 3 unfinished stitches and 4 loops on my hook. Yarn over, pull through all loops, and that's all 3 work together as one. I'm now on for a back post, and I carry on up the other side and around across the back. I finished up that round, and then I turned around and came back and worked back down towards the V. And again, I'm going to work 3 stitches together as 1 stitch. It's going to be the cluster of 3 and the one on either side of it. So I'm just going to flip upside down and work that through on camera. So here I've flipped upside down, and I'm actually working from the inside for this particular round. I've just worked a back post, so I need to do a front, back, front for these 3. So the first one is a front, so around that post, and stop my stitch at the last 2 loops. The next one is a back, and I'm going around the entirety of this cluster, so up on one side, across the front there, and out the other side, and again up to that point. So I've got 3 loops now, and then I need to do a front post for the last one. Four loops on the hook, pull through all 4 to finish that off, and that's how it looks on the other side. I'll flip it round. I'll finish this round, I'll flip it round and show you what it looks like close up. That's 3 rounds for me, and that's me all finished. After all of that, you should have something like this. Do let me know how you get on in the comments section. Thanks to everyone out there who's supporting the channel, and thanks so much for watching today.